Hello, welcome everyone. You made it to the end of the day. This is actually not the last presentation.
People are trying to escape though.
Yeah, it's actually not the last presentation. We're opening for David Blaine. He's backstage and he mentioned to us to go ahead and light you up and inspire you with some magic, hopefully. This is either going to be very magic or tragic. By show of hands, who's new to CLM? Who will be launching soon?
Ooh.
Who's nervous? Some of you in the other room, maybe? Good. Well, it can be a very scary experience. It was for us at Avanir. And what we decided to do was move with 100% adoption on day one. So what does that mean? That means all our users and all our contracts in the Apttus solution on day one. Very ambitious goal. It was either going to be very magic or tragic. Luckily, we survived. We're going to share with you some of the solutions, some of the things we learned, and maybe hopefully by the end of this quick presentation, because we're all roasting, you can take some things back to your organizations and say, you know, I thought about something. It was something I wasn't thinking of that I now see. So I think this is a laser. So 0 to 100%. We sort of tried to compartmentalize, and we used alliteration to sort of compartmentalize what was our solution. We boiled it down to the 3 Ps. First, we developed a philosophy, right? What's your purpose? Why are you implementing Apttus as a solution? What's really wrong? Pre-work. Do you have the permissions? Do you have the process identified, right? Can you mandate 0 to 100% on day one? Or are your users going to be very upset about what you're mandating? 3, preparation. This is the most important P for us. It's preparing your people. Because let's face it, you can build the most customized, configured Apttus solution, but it's your people that are using it. They're the gas in the gas tank, and without them, this thing won't drive. 4, practice. Test the solution, perfect it. So do take the time to properly UAT. And lastly, post-launch. A lot of us, we work so hard on implementing this solution for our organizations, right? And we promise them the world. And we work so hard and we're so excited on the day of launch, but we forget about post-launch. I'm talking hypercare, problem solving, making sure you've got ServiceNow or a method to continue to train your users. So that, in a nutshell, is the 4 Ps. And Garland, we'll take it from here.
I'm going to let you continue driving.
I will drive.
I'm not going to try to learn new technology.
Oh, I forgot.
On the spot.
There are actually 3 more very important Ps, and that's prayer,
Yes.
prayer, and prayer. Lots of prayers, guys.
Cussing didn't fit into the Ps. So
we're going to go a little bit of background about Avanir. We're a pharmaceutical company. We sell drugs legally. Apttus helps us with that. Back in October 2015, you remember that date?
Yep. So I joined the organization. I'm the general counsel at Avanir, and I joined the organization 2 weeks before that date, actually. So I joined the organization in October of 2015, and when I interviewed, and some of you, I'm not sure who all are lawyers in the room, but when I interviewed, that was one of the things that people asked me about a lot was, you know, contracts are a mess, or I don't like how we do contracts, or they take too long, or all these kinds of things. So I joined the organization on October 12th, and then on October 26th, we launched this project. And so for those of you who were in the presentation this morning, the keynote presentation about sort of going forward and do the right thing that the data tells you to do, even if it may be sort of upsetting the apple cart, that's really what we did. And so we had a very ambitious project. We had a launch date that was very challenging for the working team, and we made it. And so October 15th to March, we spent a lot of time on change management, policy changes, and then if you click to the next one, on June 1st, we launched. And so from the start of the project until June 1st, we took all of our contracts from an email-based solution where you emailed someone into an inbox and then sort of hoped that you'd get a contract at some point later down the line. We moved from that system to a fully integrated system where we have e-signature, We have the delegation authority. All of that stuff is all together in one system. And we had Apttus, Sumati. We had a couple other partners here that helped us to make that work. We recently, last month, not even a full month ago, launched CGS 2.0, which took it another step further with some tools to make it more user-friendly, as well as additional integration with some of our other functions.
This next slide's a fun one.
Yes, so this is sort of the visual of what I just described in terms of where we were. It's probably not very generous to our predecessors in the legal teams at our company. Hopefully they'll never see these slides, but when you think about where we were in the past, it was this manual data entry. It was, people following up by phone call and hunting people down, and nobody had an ownership, and there's lots of paper floating around. The other thing that we had as a massive challenge, and Joseph's going to talk about this, is that we had contracts that were saved in different people's on their hard drive. So if you think about sort of how do you do your contract templates, it's by folklore and by emailing something to somebody else, and then hopefully it gets into a central repository, or maybe it sits on someone's desk, or maybe it sits on someone's hard drive. So we moved from that system, and on day one, that all those days were gone on day one, and so that's the thing that we're really, really proud of, is that we got all of that switched over and integrated on day one. And so we introduced, part of what we did was this, he's rushing me. He's like, keep moving. So one of the things that we did, and this was a very big change, was in not treating every contract exactly the same. That's the core of sort of what we did. And so one of the things that's challenging, and for a lot of small organizations, particularly organizations that have some very, very high risk contracts, like pharmaceutical organizations, very large dollar or very high risk from a legal perspective contracts, we treat all of them the same because we don't want to have anything fall under the cracks. We don't want to miss that one really big sort of company, risk the company kind of issue. And so what we did was we really bucketed those things out, because I frankly, and this is the example I always use, so I hope there's no one in the room that does this, but I frankly don't see a lot of risk in how we purchase our paper. So if somebody purchases paper and they sign the wrong contract, that's not a huge risk for the organization. If it's a $5,000 contract, worst thing you're out is paper or $5,000. That's not the biggest risk. And so we prioritized and really went through, and that was the work that was done between October and March, was really getting alignment within the organization in terms of which of these balloons. And this is the best sort of example, visual example that we could come up with. Joseph came up with it for me, because I kept trying to explain this, and people couldn't quite get what I'm saying, but it's who's in the basket with you. And so we have the different kinds of people, and they're represented by different color hair. And so the business owner, if you have a low risk contract or low risk engagement, you can have a purchase order. We don't need to have a contract, and we don't need to have a lawyer involved. You can do that on your own. If it's a little bit more moderate risk, meaning that it's more risk to the business, i.e. more money, or more crucial for time. There's a few other, sort of categories that would make it at a moderate risk. So we'd have somebody from our procurement department helping that business owner along and making sure that that contract or that engagement is the right thing for the organization. Anything that's a higher risk, you're going to have a lawyer in that basket with you. And so once we sort of defined those buckets and defined those categories of contracts, everything else just flowed. And so there's my philosophy. And
well, actually, the philosophy, thank you, Garland. So that's sort of our background. That's who we are. That's sort of some of our pre-work and brought us to Apttus's front door. But the first P, philosophy, in successfully launching a 0 to 100% adoption, is that you've got to define your purpose.
Yeah.
And Garland was very this was very near and dear to her heart, right? Because sometimes we lose focus of why are we even working so hard? Why introduce Apttus? Why fix it if it's not really broken? Well, the fact of the matter is it is. So what's the solution? So our philosophy was, Garland, this is close to you, was to really have this mantra.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it is this idea of efficient, effective, easy to use for the end user, and it fits for the purpose. So a one-size-fits-all analysis or process for every single engagement that we have doesn't make sense. Just going back to the balloons, it doesn't make sense. And so what we did was we sort of triaged how we treated each of these engagements based on the type of engagements. And so once we had this sort of philosophy of this is what we're going toward, is efficient and easy to use, and it makes sense for each of the different kinds of things in terms of important and risk, then everything else sort of flowed through.
Yeah, very good. So, as you can see, I mean, we really like alliteration, right? Efficiency, effective, easy use, the 5 Ps. I'm actually going to share something about Avanir. We were acquired by Otsuka for $3.54 billion about 2 years ago. And companies pre-acquisition, post-acquisition, very different, right? Pre-acquisition, we sort of didn't have our house in order. So our parent company, Otsuka, 12.6 billion in revenue, 25,300 employees, pretty big. They came knocking at our door. They said, you guys are doing a couple things right, selling a couple drugs, we want to purchase you. So with every acquisition, you've got a due diligence, right? Usually an audit too. They looked at our contracts, and I'm going to share something that's a little embarrassing, but a little bit painful, but it's the results of that audit. And a third party came in, and you're already laughing at my pain, that's awful. Contracts at Avanir are a mess. The process is manual, there's a lack of transparency, and there's a well-found fear that Avanir is quickly falling behind their HLS counterparts. It's an industry critic.
This was said before we were there.
Before we were there. This is the mess that I inherited. This might be the mess that some of you are actually sitting in. Now, I'm not going to sing my own praises, but I do want to read another quote that I just came across just this morning to show us the progress where we've come. Since Avanir launched their CLM solution alongside their partnership with Apttus, Avanir is quickly catapulted to the forefront of big pharma, and their pioneering achievement in the HLS space is unprecedented. Avanir has unequivocally established the CLM standard in a highly regulated industry. Thank you. I wrote that quote this morning. Guys, you get to write your own success story. Who cares what your counterparts are doing, right? Tailor your success story for you. Come up with your own 5 Ps and see what works for you. And if all else fails, there's self-delusion. The next P is pre-work, right? And so I talked about this earlier. Ask yourselves, do you have the authority to mandate a 0 to 100 adoption? Let's be clear here. Let's be honest. It's safe to do a phased adoption. I'm just going to introduce HR contracts first. I'm going to have R&D. I'm going to just do my NDAs, low risk, low value contracts, and see how that works itself out. It all depends on your people and their level of sophistication, but we found that to be a little undermining. We said, you know what, I think our group can handle it. But of course, for those who cannot, we've got to have a mandate. So that means looking at your policies and procedures. What's the culture of your company? How many of you even know where to find your SOPs or policies and procedures? How antiquated are they? There's obviously no compliance in the room, right? So look at your policies and procedures. Make sure they align. Are your signature authority tables at the right level? Because Apttus can build that in. Will the automation of these contracts create a conflict? One of our policies, one of our procedures, the desktop instructions stated, if you want the attorney to review your contract, you have to email this place, that place, carbon copy the other. Some of you shaking heads, very familiar. We must have the same SOP. Well, in Apttus, it's all automated now, right? So you don't want to set yourself up for that conflict. Trust me, the users who are reluctant to change will be the first ones to raise their hands and shout from the rooftops, there's a conflict. What we also did is we got buy-in. We got buy-in from our executive team. We got a CEO mandate. I know that many of you have a lot going on, but pause, talk, and get buy-in from the top. Garland calls it tone from the top. And we had our CEO come out, we recorded a short video, basically saying, everyone listen to Joseph and Garland, what they're doing is important. But it did wonders. It did wonders to get that sort of buy-in. We had a communication plan with our executive leadership team. But from top to bottom means having team meetings with your administrative assistants, right? reading the pulse of the company. How do they feel about this new solution? We know it's right for the business. Are they on the same page? So, do you have the authority to mandate 0 to 100? The next P is preparation. Now, this is very important. If you take anything away with this from this short presentation, it's focus on your people. Train them, make sure that they're aligned. So we approached our people. Our people are very important to us. We actually talked to our people. We interviewed them. I recommend against this unless you have thick skin. So Garland and we actually posed the question, right?
Yep.
We talked to all our administrative assistants and said, what's the problem with contracts here at Avanir? Dun, dun, dun. We got a few comments back, not too many. Some of these might look very familiar. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. Everything's antiquated. Everything's back in the Stone Ages.
There's no consistency. All of the things that I'm sure you all are hearing. Our solution wasn't necessarily unique in how we addressed this. Our problems weren't unique. What was unique was that we were in the position to, sort of strike first and strike hard. And so when you have something that people are so sort of dissatisfied with, we had an acquisition, we have our old system, it's not quite ready to ramp up. We have a new person, you have that new person glow that you can sort of go in and be a bull in a china shop for a little bit. We took advantage of all of those things coming together and were able to get this real feedback from people because it wasn't going to hurt either of our feelings. And we could get people to just say, okay, what's wrong? Just tell me, I'll fix it. We're gonna fix it, so tell me the truth. What do you need it to look like? But then the other piece of that was we were very, very transparent in terms of speak now or hold your peace. And so there was an ownership piece that was one of the critical aspects of the people piece was, it's just core change management of involving the people who are actually going to be doing the work. It's all fine and good for me to go and talk to our CEO or to other members of the executive leadership team, but those aren't the people who are going to be doing the work. Those aren't the people who you're changing how their day looks. And we approached it very much from whose day are we changing? Whose core job function are we changing? Let's go talk to them, early and often, and that's really the core of what we've done.
Again, only if you've got thick skin.
Yes.
There are a couple other bubbles in there with naming me personally. Joseph keeps making up his own quotes.
Joseph's jokes aren't funny.
Thanks. Yours are?
No.
The next P is, again, preparation. People, we're back at people again. Mm-hmm. What we did is we segmented our people, right? Because you have different levels of sophistication within your organization. You're going to have people that adopt and adapt to Apttus very quickly. Some of them might even be able to write code. And then you've got some of your less sophisticated who struggle with maybe opening Outlook, right? And so you've got to accommodate all your people. But that also means sort of defining and segmenting them, right? So we understood who our key users were. You can take this term, it's not trademark, but we call them contract champions. And some of you shaking heads, you know exactly who they are, who are going to be the leaders, the proponents, the lobbyists, and you will need to call upon them when you roll out your system. So we broke it into segments. We knew who the key stakeholders are. We influenced their buy-in. And we implemented quick wins, right? So some of the low-hanging fruit. We're going to fix X, Y, and Z. We're going to implement DocuSign. It's going to make your life change. And again, the next was, again, a communication plan with our people. People are important. So you can see this CGS. You might have seen it up on the screen. We actually renamed Apttus Contract Generation System. Has our own little nice ring to it. You can do that. I don't think Apttus minds. We also didn't stick with the green color. I hope they don't mind. But what we did is we created a communication plan, right? And these are some of the tips and tricks that helped with us. So we did a lunch and learn. We'd host a lunch and learn at different stages of our pre-deployment. We got executive leadership buy-ins. We had regular meetings with our board just to keep them posted on what's going on. We also met with administrative assistants, right? Top to bottom. We did a launch campaign. This is a lot of fun. I encourage you all to not belittle the value of a parade. You know, I mean, it's okay to sing your own praises. But part of that launch campaign, we did prizes, we did trivia, we had one-on-one meetings. And you see the different types of logos we came up with. We held a survey monkey and sent it out to the entire office and said, you know, what logo do you want to have on CGS? Fortunately, they didn't pick the best one, so Garland here, being a GC, she sort of vetoed it and just picked her own anyway. Don't tell anyone. But it's all about communication. And what we did was actually pretty fun. We would hold these little trivia events, and we have an example of one of the fun games we did. In fact, the moment you all sat down, one of you's a lucky winner. The moment you sit down, I think there's a CGS bag under one of your chairs. You literally have a lucky ass. There's a CGS bag, there's a couple maybe gift cards in there with a, is it in the back? Yeah, then maybe, could you hold up that bag? We've got, yeah, CGS bag. Something simple as that. There's a gift card in there. It may be at least $5 at Starbucks, at least. It could only be $5 maybe, but at least that much. But that's an example, build the buzz. Build the buzz. Even if the system isn't exactly perfect on day one, at least you've got that, right?
You have the people that would normally be maybe naysayers, maybe, you know, change is hard. For some people, doing a contract, doing a confidentiality agreement, people in our clinical operations, anybody who's in sort of those spaces where there's contracts sort of every day for some folks, you're changing their day. And so things are going to go wrong at launch, but you have those people in your corner backing you up and rooting for you and saying, hey, I'm not going to tell anybody, but I had this issue. I just wanted to make sure you knew so that we can fix it together. That's the attitude that we managed to get with the vast majority of our users, which was what allowed this, you know, to happen, because there are going to be bumps in the road and you have to get those people on board before you launch. And that was one of the things we spent a lot of time on, and some of the, you know, little tchotchkes that you think about that, you know, we are in the pharmaceutical business, and so we thought about, you know, different ways that people do branding of their products. And so we had a mouse that we gave everybody that came to training. We had a bag that we gave. So we had little things that were sort of, hey, we know you're going to use these. These are going to help you in your job. And we thought about it very sort of strategically, so that it was always sort of focused on, we're helping you, we're helping you. That was our message.
One of the most popular handouts in the bag is actually a stress ball.
Yes.
Yeah, with our logo on it. Also can be used as a projectile, so.
Yes, it can be.
Make sure you
I've
buy
tested
a soft
it out.
You purchase a soft one. The next P is practice, right? So now as you notice, I've skipped all conversations about configuration.
Nope.
I leave that to you. You all know you're going to work with the Apttus development team. They're going to build this ship exactly how you want. You know your business requirements. But once you have something together, again, this may be sort of singing to the cry, but practice, UAT, and practice, but what? Practice with your people. Again, it's back to the people. Identify your different user groups, your casual users, your heavy requesters, your contract champions, or those who have infrequently used the system. How about go a step further? Identify who are usually the most boisterous and loud, who are the quick to complain, right? You probably might even hearing some of those folks now. And segment them and have them test at different stages. What I actually found to be very helpful is we did use Apttus University. They came out. John Roars isn't in the room, but we did 6 3-hour sessions with our user groups. It's a great resource. He put training materials together, e-learning modules, and we tailored the training to each of our user groups. But that's where you practice and you perfect your system. Then you launch. So launch is what happens between 4 and 5. But after you launch, now you're in post-launch, which is problem solving. We call it hypercare. What does hypercare mean? Well, be prepared, have a team ready. You don't get to rest on your laurels just yet. There's going to be a lot of hand-holding, especially when you move with a 0 to 100% adoption. Folks who are all forced to use the system now. There's no way around it. If you do, you're non-compliant. No contracts outside of the system. And so there's going to be a lot of hand-holding, physically. There's a little crying a bit too, mostly on my part. But be extra responsive. Visit your users, right? Part of the presentation was ServiceNow. We adopted ServiceNow, so we would have a ticketing system. And we could keep metrics and reporting on who has questions, on what, how long are we taking for a response. Because we realized that we have to stay vigilant during this post era. I really encourage you to do so. Because we found that the first 2 weeks sort of sets the tone for your environment and will build trust and faith in your system. So we just like to sort of go over some of the numbers and how Apttus, we call it CGS, has helped us. We have 107 active users on the day of launch. That was a lot, 107 people all signed into the system, expected to use it. But if you trust the 5 Ps, it can work out. We had 19 training sessions, 3 hours long. We've had over 100 office hours. This is another tip and trick. We have regular office hours, 3 days a week for an hour. Bring your contracts down, stop by with your laptops. An attorney or a database administrator can walk you through. We've had over 400 people attend. We've had this many requests last year. We've doubled the number of contracts. So this is real. Expect it when you launch. And 24 minutes was the fastest contract from draft to fully signed. You all are here interested in Apttus. You know, this is very possible. We're actually trying to beat these records. So key lessons, what did we get wrong? It's going to be blank. So no, we did get a few things wrong. We did get a few things wrong. The first is you can never engage your people early enough, right? Some of you are on the cusp of launching. Some of you are just thinking about signing up with Apttus. You can never engage your people early enough, right? Buy-in early on is key. Understand that the tool, Apttus, reveals truth. It's not going to fix everything if you don't have your policies and processes in place. If you haven't done that pre-work, it's going to reveal. If you've done the pre-work, it's all great. It bubbles to the surface. Sloppy pre-work will be revealed by the tool. Didn't happen with us, but it's a very real reality. Plan for the rule, but expect the exception, right? So I think that's self-explanatory, but plan for the rule. And the next is a data cleanse. This was very near and dear to my heart. In fact, if the second most important thing you take away from this session is do a proper data cleanse. What does that mean? Well, we have a structure, probably like you in your organizations, of a parent-child agreement, right? An MSA, a work order, an SOW. We have accounts. And if you're coming from a non-CLM platform, you realize that your current contracts may be missing pages. Start, end dates might be wrong. Yep. The parent-child relationship isn't properly linked. How if you don't have a CLM? So we sort of overlooked this piece. It's a very painful thing to overlook because on day one, the library is only as good as the books contained therein. So do a proper data cleanse, do a proper migration. Last year we actually came to this same event. We met with Sumati. They have a booth outside, some of them in the room. They did an excellent job of data cleansing. You don't have to do it yourself, but if you're looking at, by show of hands, who has more than 5,000 contracts in their database? Oh, it's a game, is it? All right, stop showing off. 20,000? Wow, it's pretty good.
Winner.
Yeah, imagine doing that data cleanse. Imagine trying to find that missing page or that missing link, or one of your users is working on amendment number 4.
There's no 2.
But there's no 2 or 3,
yeah.
Right? So please heed a proper data cleanse and a proper migration, right? And outsource if you can. So those are our key lessons. I do want to thank you for the time. I do want to go ahead and reiterate that we were successful from 0 to 100 because of the 5 Ps. Follow the 5 Ps, and that can equal a successful launch. And I'm going to leave you guys on another quote. This is a real quote this time, okay? But understand that a successful launch relates directly to this. The size of your success is measured by the strength of your desire, the size of your dream, and how you handle disappointment along the way. That's by a bloke called Robert Kiyosaki. And actually, no, I'm sorry. If all else fails, there's self-delusion. Thank you for your time, and if ever there was such a thing, happy contracting.